Welcome back, everyone. Today we'll be discussing the Jordan 1 prototype. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Jordan 1 prototype and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates such as the recent Off-White exclusive access drops, feel free to follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, as well as personals for you. For those who don't know, the Jordan 1 prototype releases on September 24th, tomorrow. Retail will be $170 for men's sizes. Stock is only 90,000 pairs, which is just slightly below the average stock. Considering this is only men's, it's nothing too notable though. In order to determine if the Jordan 1 prototype will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop. Also, when shipments come in, essentially the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding, not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather the hold margin over X period of time. Are these actually going to be worth your time at the end of the day? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, stock for all sizes combined is just slightly below average, as we discussed earlier. Nothing too different from the usual Jordan 1 here. However, although pre-sale is evidently very low, sale volume still is not even as impressive as we have seen on other Jordan 1s, those of which were going for much more the day before the drop. The bids, unfortunately, also do not look very promising either. There is a very minor amount that are just over 200, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I am not expecting anything too good for these. At best, if you do have no tax in your state, you should be able to make some lunch money with a poor margin, mostly on larger sizes. If you do have tax, you'll then have to find local buyers to avoid the seller fees. Unfortunately, the demand just is not there for this colorway, and it makes sense. It certainly is not the most desirable, and it is not universal at all. And this, of course, is clearly reflected through the lack of bids and sale volume at the already very low pre-sale. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their decrease following the early access pairs going into circulation, which was just about 6,000 pairs for men's, along with general early Flex app reservation pre-sellers. This leaves the current average at about $206 for sizes 7.5 to 14. Obviously, this is not ideal and isn't very different from the recent Jordan 1s that we have been seeing due to the lack of demand on these specific colorways. We haven't seen a good colorway in quite a while, unfortunately. Now, normally, we see a notable change post-US drop. This is when we experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. You guys should know what I'm referring to by now, as we discuss it very frequently, yet it almost still always occurs. Regarding the impulsivity effect, if you haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after that individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. Keyword, normally, but not always. That 10% isn't always the case, such as when a sneaker is slightly overvalued. Obviously, a perfect example of this was just recently on the Yeezy Foam Runner release, which hardly increased at all and then began to fall just days later. Although pre-sale is already very low when it comes to these, and that can sometimes justify room for a minor increase, I'm still really skeptical when it comes to this colorway specifically, considering the severe lack of demand on it. When it comes to these, I'm not expecting any post-drop increase due to the lack of demand. Often, I even suggest a potential 5% increase, which is quite minor, but in this case, I'd say they'll more or less essentially stay the same, unfortunately. This would potentially leave us with, again, the same post-drop average as pre-drop at 206. Meanwhile, with many more hype Jordan 1s, we could hypothetically see a 10% increase. I don't believe that'll be the case this time for this colorway. Now, keep this number in mind because we'll be revisiting this number when discussing the most optimal times to sell at. Remember, this will just be the post-drop price for a finite period of time. Now, let's discuss what prices will look like when shipments go out in the 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation, aside from the amount of pairs that already went out through exclusive access and in-store pairs. When it comes to these decent-sized releases, the effects are normally very noticeable, often up to around 15%. Now, for these, I'm expecting these to decrease by a fair amount due to the high stock stock and rather low demand, but considering they are already so low, assuming there is no positive impulsivity effect, I'd only expect about a 10% decrease in price rather than a full 15%. Now this could potentially then leave the prices at about $185 on average after that 2-week range of shipments going out. Unfortunately, as mentioned earlier, this only leaves about lunch money profit at best if you do have no tax in your state. Obviously not the ideal drop. Now that the average price ranges at those points in time are evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease. When it comes to these, I'm expecting a very similar performance to what we have seen recently with the other Jordan 1s, not too much different when it comes to those with the low demand due to their colorways. For example, we have the Jordan 1 Electro Orange, which has essentially plateaued since the release in July. Now granted, it has not been very long at all. July was just around the corner, but there has essentially been no positive movement at all on these. Now if we look a little farther back towards May of this year, we find the Shadow 2.0 pair, which actually had significantly more demand than these, but still nothing too immense. Despite those being quite low, even those have not increased by a drastic amount, just a couple dollars essentially. When it comes to these prototypes with even less demand now, I do not see these increasing by a notable amount for a long time. Potentially not until 6 months from now, and even then not by a significant amount. However, considering they will also be so low after the post-shipment range, I also don't believe they will continue decreasing. Rather, I'm expecting a very long plateau for these. Prices should essentially just stay the same. Finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time even if they do hypothetically increase? Considering I'm expecting a rather long plateau for these prior to any increases, this will of course affect the potential 1-year ROI that we normally use to rate these potential holds. And at the absolute best, I could see these potentially getting to that 245 to 255 range after about 1 year. Certainly nothing very impressive, even with the prices being so low already, and assuming that potential range after a year, the ROI would still then not even be too notable. Hence, I would then have to conclude with a 3 out of 10 rating overall. Definitely one of my lower ones, as I definitely see this being a below average hold, unfortunately. Now, I am shipping to a no tax state, so I do plan to go for some large sizes for these, but I am planning to quick sell all of my pairs, not holding any of them. Also, just a note in general for anyone considering holding any item who does have low capital, you should never hold anything in general if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you need money to go for drops, try to sell as soon as possible. Let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs in the comments down below, because at the end of the day, this is just a discussion. I can't predict the future. That's just my personal analysis based off the data that I've personally acknowledged. We have a lot of brilliant minds watching this video right now though, so I implore you guys to please share your notions down in the comment section below. But anyway, that will conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two. Subscribe and enable post notifications just to stay 100% updated on all hype releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. Also, feel free to follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on restocks or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua if you want to keep up with the progress or restocks. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and Personals for You. This way, you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that though, I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, good luck on all future releases.